arts. Chris is a published author, a couple times over now, and he is going to talk with us about a new approach that he's looking at taking for his next book. So I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here, and it's great to see so many people out here for LASTS, the third LASTS, and for our discussion of digital humanities, and also online as well. So I'm going to talk to you now about some of the things, actually following up on what Cole spoke about. Actually, I think they fit well in a certain way, because I was trying to take advantage of some of the technologies that Cole talked about. So this is an ebook as ecosystem of digital scholarship. I need to talk a little bit about how this project came about. Really, it came to life in conversation with and dialogue with my students. The figure I teach ancient Greek philosophy and have been teaching it for a while, and the figure of Socrates, of course, is an enigmatic one. Over the course of teaching over some years, one of the themes that emerged in my class was, what is Socrates doing when he's engaging with those people he encounters in Athens? What kind of politics is he actually practicing? So that became an important central issue of our discussions. Socratic politics is an interesting thing. Socrates says in the Gorgias, "I think that with few Athenians, so as not to say the only one, I attempt the political art truly, and I alone of those now living do political things." And so this is kind of the passage that animated the project, and particularly when you take this passage in conjunction with the passage from Plato's Apology, the text in which Socrates is defending himself against the death penalty, loses that argument, by the way, and in case you didn't get the ending of that one. He says there that if he had practiced politics earlier in his life, he would have been killed much earlier. So on the one hand, he says he's the only one who practices politics. On the other hand, he says, "Oh, I never do political things. I never practice politics." So Socrates' life really is animated by a specific kind of political practice that I thought was very interesting and important, and something that we talked a lot about in our classes with students. It really juxtaposes traditional politics, which is both public and often pursued through institutional means, with another kind of politics, Socratic politics, which is personal rather than institutional. And it involves the attempt to turn individuals toward the questions of what is just and beautiful and good. And I call these in the book, ultimately, project and in our discussions in class, erotic ideals. And when I talk about erotic ideals, I'm not talking about anything sexual, but rather the Platonic sense of eros, that is to say, an ideal toward which we're attracted, even if, and maybe even precisely because, it's elusive. So three examples of these erotic ideals are justice, what is just, what is beautiful, and what is good. Socrates, of course, pursued these ideals in dialogue with those he encountered in and around Athens. And I began thinking further, about this project, it occurred to me that I should pursue a path of scholarly research that performs some of the elements of the phenomenon that I was investigating, namely Socratic politics. So at that point, the digital dialogue was born. In 2009, it's great to have Alan Gorky here and Cole here, who were integral in helping me create this project. I was a Teaching and Learning with Technology Summer Faculty Fellow. And the project I undertook was to see if I could pursue rigorous philosophical research in public using digital media technologies. I wanted to investigate a way to test new ideas in public, but without the rigidity of the written word. So my Teaching and Learning with Technology, my ETS team, I'm sure you remember this, Alan, we talked a lot about, well, should we do this for blogging? What should we do? And the written word struck me as too rigid. It was too easily citable to allow for the free play of new ideas. So it occurred to us that Socrates' decision not to write, which was a pretty important one, Socrates didn't write, whereas Plato decided to write, which is a good thing, otherwise we wouldn't have anything to be talking about at the moment. But Socrates' decision not to write enabled him to introduce ideas to those he encountered and to challenge them in new ways and to play with ideas in ways that I wanted to model. So I wanted to try something like that in a digital space, so we created the Digital Dialogue, a podcast dedicated to cultivating the excellences of dialogue in a digital age. And rather than pushing my own work out to the public, I decided to invite colleagues to the podcast to talk about their work. And in the process, I found ways to integrate some of my own research into the discussion. And what I found was that it really affirmed and publicized the work of others, which was critically important. It helped me cultivate the art of listening, which is very difficult to do when you know you're being live and recorded. But it turns out to be one of the excellences of dialogue that is really important and I'm still working on all the time. It also enriched my scholarship by exposing it to new ideas. There's nothing like the pressure of knowing you'll need to engage a colleague in public dialogue to make you actually read their work. So that was something that was important to know. And some of the best conversations I've had in my professional career have been had in this growing body of what's now 55 episodes of the Digital Dialogue. There is a Facebook page for the Digital Dialogue. I'm pretty proud of my 235 likers and friends there. So, there's the link right there. Shameless plug. Get on there, see if I can get 240 at some point. But, 235, it's rare that I actually, as a philosopher, speaking about ancient Greek philosophy, speak in front of 200 people. So the fact that there are 235 people there, and there's others than just my family, although I think I see John Dolan out there, so thanks, John. I appreciate that, is important. Many episodes I've recorded have amplified the work of many of my colleagues, graduate students I've had on there, as well as colleagues from professional organizations. And those conversations have also led to published articles of my own in peer-reviewed journals. So the idea is to combine the virtues of digital media with the traditional virtues of paper scholarship. So now, over the course of the investigation of the nature of Socratic politics with my students and with my colleagues in digital dialogue and in face-to-face dialogue, it became increasingly clear that the things Socrates says in the dialogues were not only doing things with those characters encountered in the dialogues, but Platonic writing. The way Plato puts things into words, the characters he animated, the context in which they appear, all of that was doing things to us as readers. It was doing things and asking us to consider the same kinds of things that Socrates was doing with those he encountered. So it occurred to me that Platonic writing is a political art as well. Platonic writing is analogous to, but different from, Socratic politics. Different from the art of Socratic politics, but both cultivate a concern for what is just and beautiful and good, and both inspire a desire for these ideals as what I want to call erotic principles, that is, principles that are sought for, elusive, but yet capable of transforming the way we live together with one another. So our political lives are enriched if we're willing to integrate those questions of what is good, what is just, what is beautiful into the lives we live together. And this, I think, Platonic writing itself is doing to us as readers. So there were two levels, the practices of Socratic politics as they occurred in the dialogue, and now what these texts are doing to us and with us in the writing. And these questions were animated by this famous quotation from the Phaedrus, where Socrates says to Phaedrus, "In a way, Phaedrus, writing has a strange character. If you question written words with the intention of learning something about what they're saying, they always just continue to say the same things." And this quotation articulates a concern that writing is dead, and that if it is to become alive politically, I recognized, if it is to be capable of animating a political life, it must be brought to life by the readers of the text. So it's our responsibilities as readers to respond creatively and collaboratively with the text we encounter. And as I was thinking about how to express this idea for this presentation, much like Cole, Twitter came in handy. This tweet flowed through my stream from Babette Babbitt. She quoted from Bruno Latour, "It's the reader who writes the text." And of course, I knew he had said that, but I didn't quite know where he said it, so I tweeted back and tweeted out, well, okay, where does he say that? And a few minutes later, Spencer Malloy, somebody else I'm following on Twitter, had linked me to the book, and a minute or two later, he actually nicely highlighted the passage itself. And so that's why you have this nice quotation here for the presentation. It's the reader who writes the text from Bruno Latour and Steve Wooliger's Laboratory Life. An example of how being plugged into the Twitter stream really can enrich your life if used well. It can also impoverish your life, so I don't want to cover that over either. This led to me to also remember Hans-Georg Gadamer's quotation about reading public. He says, "What is fixed in writing has raised itself into a public sphere of meaning in which everyone who can read has an equal share." So this notion that what is fixed in writing brings a reading public to life, and thus that writing in this way wins a political life for itself, points to the politics of collaborative reading that I try to argue in the book project at the end of the book. And let me just say a word or two about that. The politics of reading that I try to argue for is rooted in the reading of Platonic texts. Plato exposes us to the enigmatic practices of Socratic politics. And the politics of reading, collaborative reading, has three dimensions from my perspective. It opens new possibilities of relation for us. It cultivates our abilities to respond to each other and to each situation with imagination. And it inspires a desire for ideals capable of enriching our lives together. So can a book be published in a way that performs the politics of collaborative reading for which it argues? So let me say, yes, I hope so, and this is what I'm planning to do. It is being reviewed now by a major publisher who I won't name until they accept it, and then they'll get all the praise in the world. But right now, here's the idea. I pitched it and I'm very excited about it, but the book is being reviewed according to the normal processes, which I, of course, wanted because I want to get the legitimacy of old school scholarship out of it. Even though I'm an associate dean, I still concern myself with these issues. It's important. First of all, I'm going to have enhanced content in this book. It would have to include something. The book's going to have to include something of the dynamic process by which it came into being. And so I plan to embed the podcast. I refer to about 13 of the podcasts in the book. I plan to embed the 13 episodes of the digital dialogue that are referenced in the book into the book itself. Hopefully we'll have, for the physical book, QR codes that somebody can just scan and listen to right there if they're so moved, rather than just a link they have to type into. But then in the ebook version, the idea would be that you can click the button and listen to it right there on your Kindle or iPad or whatever you're reading it on. So that's good. But enhanced content is all well and good, but the experience remains essentially private. So to cultivate a collaborative reading experience, I plan to develop ways of publicly highlighting and annotating the text of the book and sharing it with others. So here are the models, something like digo.com, which allows you to mark up any web page. And here I've marked up an online review of my book on Aristotle, and you couldn't resist making comments on the reviewer, who's a friend of mine. And then actually annotated it, and you can see the annotations here. Actually, another colleague of mine has responded to my annotations, so you can do sticky notes and things like that. So that's what I'm hoping to have as possible on the digital form of the enhanced book. The idea would be to enable readers of the text to make their highlights and annotation public in a way that I, as author, and other readers might engage them. So much of this technology is already in place. I reviewed a book, Catherine Zuckert's book, 800-page gigantic book, Plato's Philosophers, and I asked them, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I needed an electronic form because I can't carry this 800 book around with me all the time. So they gave me a nice gift of the Kindle version of it. And so I highlighted the text, and it was great. And of course, on the Kindle, the Amazon takes those highlights if you make them public and makes them public. And And it was great because when I finalized the review, here's the review in the Notre Dame Philosophical Reviews website. It really helped me write it, but how much better would it have been and how much more interesting would it have been if Catherine Zucker had been able to see my annotations and my comments at the same time and help me think through some issues I had brought on. Now, I did have her on episode 54 of the Digital Dialogue, so here, you can visit that and listen to that conversation after the fact. But this sort of thing, for example, a site like findings.com could help with. As I read Kathleen Fitzpatrick's book, Planned Obsolescence, I highlighted it on my Kindle and published my highlights to findings.com, where people following me can see what I found interesting. So it's not a big step from this to feeding such comments back to a blog site or some other online site of community where the ideas can be further discussed and developed. And so that's what I want to do with the publication of this book, Foster a Continuing Dialogue. Right? So this is an example, screenshot of Comment Press, which allows comments to be attached to paragraphs and pages of specific texts. So the idea would be to enable ongoing dialogue and commentary on the book to be published to my blog and thus allow me to further engage the readers of my book and thus further cultivate a community of collaborative reading. I have a blog post on this I invite you to read. Has the links to the things like findings.com, Amazon, Kindle stuff. But the idea would be, can I find a way to perform some of the ideas articulated in the book? Right? Can I then further seed new ideas of scholarship that way, perhaps by inviting people who comment and read the book onto the digital dialogue to continue a more dynamic dialogue that would then seed new ideas for research and enrich my scholarship and the scholarship of others. So that's the dream. We'll see if it can be put in reality once the book manuscript is accepted. So thanks.